Hi, this is Baron Stevens, and today I want to do part 3 of my discussion on saxophone flexibility. In part 1 we talked about mouthpiece pitch and working flexibility there, and then in part 2 we started using the palm keys and using the whole saxophone as our part of our flexibility practice. Well, now I want to take it to the next level, and this is what we a lot of times call overtones or harmonics. And this is something that you've heard, like whenever you've heard a bugle call. That series of notes are the natural harmonics that can come from like a tubed instrument when you only have one length. So of course all brass instruments operate on this principle, but then now they have the valve so they can do things chromatically. But bugles can't go chromatic, they can only hit the notes of the harmonic series, which is a part of even woodwinds. And all music is built on this overtone series. So basically an overtone, to start off with, so if I go low B flat here on my alto, and then I just went up an octave to the middle B flat without putting down the octave key. I did it by changing things in here. Now, what I found is everybody has played overtones. When I first talk about this, they go, I don't know how to do that. Well, the first time you try to play a low C or a low B flat, that probably happened, right? And of course, usually that happens at first because we're too tight in the jaw, we're not opening up enough. When we're doing overtones, though, it's different in that we're gonna try to use the jaw as little as possible, and we want to do it from in here, in the oral cavity area, throat, soft palate, the tongue, what we do with the tongue on the inside of the mouth as well as in the throat. And so that's how we get these different pitches. So yeah, as we work on this, and this is basically the overtone series here, and it can go higher. Hopefully you can read this here, but if we start with the low B flat, the first overtone I can get to is the middle B flat. And so as you're working with this, that's what you want to first go for. And see if you can just kind of bounce up and down between the low B flat and the middle B flat, again, without changing the fingers at all. I'm also not tonguing between the notes. I'm separating it, mainly with my air right now. Sometimes might use the glottis. Now, ultimately, it'd be better to use the tongue, but when we first try to incorporate the tongue, it can mess things up. So we usually leave the tongue out of it for now. And then once you get the B flat to come out, then we can see if we can add the F. And you can practice bouncing around between those three notes. I have found for some reason a lot of people have a hard time with this F, and sometimes even the middle B flat. Then a lot of times the higher B flat comes out easier than these middle two. And if that's the case, don't worry about it. Just keep going for it. And then of course the next one. And especially on these lower ones, hopefully you can see I'm not really using my jaw. This is all inside the throat. And then eventually after we get to the B flat, we can go, of course here it's first doing an octave, then it does a fifth, then it does a fourth, then it does a major third, or a major third, minor third, another minor third. And we're basically from the B flat, this B flat here, we're spelling a dominant seventh triad. And then yeah, we can keep going up. The next is B flat, and then C, and so on and so forth. So it'll be something like this eventually. And that's as far as this reed wants to go. Better reeds will get you up higher, usually a stiffer reed. Synthetic reeds, from my experience, haven't done as well as real reeds at this, but you can still do it on synthetics as well. So anyway, so that's just kind of how you work. You just first work these lower notes. Now I found for some reason a lot of us kind of hit this wall right here at this high B flat, and we can't seem to get above that for a long time. Main thing is just patience and persistence. Just keep working with it for ideally every day. The more time, of course, the better. When I first worked on this stuff, I was spending an hour a day on it, and it still took me several months before I could do a lot of these things. So it does take a lot of time. So there's no way around that I know of. Some people might be a little more natural at it, but it took me quite a while to be able to learn to do this stuff. So it's not something that some freak mutant mishap happened to me. It's something that I had to work for to get. And then, of course, something else that happens to some people, and even happened to me a little bit, is I got stuck here, but then I started getting squeaks as I tried to go higher. I get something like that and go, oh man, I'm squeaking. But it's not a squeak. It is actually just a higher overtone. And I found I could come down through the series first before I could go up through the upper series. So I just practiced it like that. And eventually I got so I could do the upper notes. Let's see. And then of course, yeah, another exercise that we can do that in a lot of ways also helped me a little bit better to get this, and it's what we call matching. And that's where we can play the regular notes. I'm going to play the regular B flat fingering here. And I'm going to play the low B flat, but hit the harmonic. And try to get these things to match as close to as possible. So a lot of times the harmonic note's out of tune, so I want to try to get it in tune with the regular fingering. But the regular fingering doesn't have as beefy of a sound as the overtone does. So I'm trying to match those two things to each other. Etc. Of course, that's where we run out of regular fingerings and we start going into altissimo, which is the next video in this series. So anyway, what I need to do is, that's how we do it on saxophone. It works the same on tenor too, of course. Tenor in some ways might be a little bit easier, but then what do we do on clarinet? Clarinet is a little bit of a different animal in that. I mean, we can kind of do overtones off the low notes, but it skips a lot of the notes. It like goes every other one at first. We go from the low register. So to be able to kind of utilize this series a little bit, we actually have to start from the middle B, and we can do the notes higher. I should also mention on the saxophone, don't just do the low B flat, also do the low B, low C sharp, low D. The higher you get, the harder it is to get these overtones out. But kind of keep working with the different pitches. But on clarinet, we have to kind of go from the middle B here, so it's all the fingers down and the register key down. And then the first one we pop up to is a G. And then from there, from that G, we can now do the bugle songs. And then then we can do from other notes too, like from the C. And so we can do the same thing, once we kind of start getting going a little bit. And actually from right away, we want to start doing the low notes. Etc. So the question some of you might be asking is, why do we do this? And there's at least three main things I can think of for right now. One of is again, we're talking about flexibility, so it helps develop greater flexibility and control. So it's not just being able to bend things around. Now we can actually put things where we want them with this flexibility we've developed. And that kind of leads us to, of course, getting into altissimo. Altissimo is basically creating overtones using different fingerings and then being able to control it from in here. As far as getting into altissimo, one of the things that Raster said, if I remember right, was he suggested not to even think about trying to do the altissimo fingerings until you've spent at least a year working on these overtone fingerings. And I think that's some good advice. A year might be a little bit long, but I think it has some good benefit if you spend some quality time working on the overtones first. And then another reason for it is, and to me this is the most important reason, even if you never ever want to do altissimo, just the fact that it beefs up our tone quality. When we play a note, we're not just playing a single frequency. you know, we've got the basic or the fundamental note, but there's several other frequencies that are playing above it, and that's what these overtones are. So when I'm playing a low B flat, these other notes are also sounding at the same time. They're not as strong as the low one, but this is what gives us our tone. And the more of these that are present in our regular tone, the better we sound. The example I use a lot of times is flute. A lot of times you can tell a beginning flute player from an advanced flute player. The difference mainly is that an advanced flute player has more of the overtones present in their regular tone, where a more beginning flute player has almost just nothing but the fundamental. So same thing affects the saxophone too. So if nothing else, do this for your tone, because it'll just make it so much better. And the third reason that I found is sometimes, actually a lot of times in jazz, a lot of jazz players use them in their solos, and I guess maybe the one that pops into my mind, of course Coltrane used it quite a bit too, but Michael Brecker does this a lot, like his song Delta City Blues. You know, so we can kind of get those, you know, we're playing regular notes and then popping in the overtones as kind of another way of getting a different tone color, a different timbre on the notes that we're playing. So anyway, so that's all I wanted to talk about today. Next video, part 4, will be on altissimo. So I hope you've found something useful from this, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask on the YouTube page here, or you can email me, and I'll put that at the end of this video. Thanks.